I'm like at the thing. I can read it. It's just that yeah. You know, I could see it. It was just that I was having a hard time with it moving.
On his T-shirt Tuesday because it looks like someone missed the alarm this morning. Nice shirt. I'm Besh.
I'm Anais Quintela. It's 5 p.m. on Tuesday, March 7th, and we're coming to you live from the Creative Tucson studio in downtown Tucson. First, let's talk local headlines.
Let's talk about them. Okay. Well, it turns out not a single hate crime was prosecuted in 2015 or 2016 in Pima County, according to the local website, the Pima Liberator. As part of 1990's Hate Crime Statistics Act, Pima County law enforcement must release information on crimes that were perceived to be motivated by hate. In order for these incidents to be charged as hate crimes, the prosecutor must make a formal indictment alleging the motivation of hate against a protected group. According to the documents, the Liberator found that 0 out of 20 incidents categorized by the Tucson Police and the Pima County Sheriff's Department as hate crimes were prosecuted. 11 of the 20 incidents involved race or color, while 7 involved national origin and 5 involved religion. Only 3 of these cases resulted in arrests, and 2 of those 3 were prosecuted as misdemeanor disorderly conduct charges, which are not included under Arizona's hate crime law. The Pima County Attorney Barbara Lawal brought only 1 felony charge in incidents of hate crime when one high school student assaulted another student while calling, in quote, faggot, in quote, retard, and bitch. But this case was still not counted as a hate crime, as the defendant was able to plead guilty to a lowest level felony and was sentenced to probation. After probation is done, he will quickly be elected to the State House of Representatives.
Should we commit some hate crimes against each other just to see if they get
right now?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that word again.
A bill mandating 1 hour of coding in K-12 schools in Arizona passed a House committee yesterday and will move on to the House. The bill, introduced by Representative John Kavanaugh, requires students to complete the 1 hour of coding lessons sometime between the 4th and 12th grade. Kavanaugh says that while 1 hour won't be enough time for students to become proficient in coding, he thinks that it will at least urge some students to go further towards learning more about computer programming. The bill, SB 1146, already cleared the Senate with a 17-13 vote and passed the House committee with a 7-4 vote. Kavanaugh says that he was inspired to bring up the legislation after a trip to Silicon Valley, where he and other officials met with officials from Google, Facebook, and other tech companies. He says that there are not enough students who have coding skills and that he'd like to see more Arizona students take it up. The program will be built on-site called hourofcode.com, run by a nonprofit organization that seeks to teach coding to young people. But some officials don't agree with the need for coding classes, such as Republican Representative Michelle Udall of Mesa, who says that she's not supportive of micromanaging what students learn. While she has had her bachelor's degree in computer science and supports the intent, she doesn't think that 1 hour of instruction will be effective. She says that 1 hour is just enough time to be frustrated with coding, but not to really learn anything significant. On the other hand, being frustrated and not learning anything significantly pretty much sums up the experience of kids in the Arizona school system anyway.
Yeah, truth. The Gospel Rescue Mission in Tucson is being forced to cut its occupancy because of city regulations. The mission, who houses homeless men, will need to cut its beds from 106 down to 55. The city of South Tucson performed an inspection on the shelter and found that the dorms were too small to comply with the city's fire code, which requires 50 feet of space. Gospel Mission reps say that between 51 and 81 men could suddenly become homeless because of the ruling. However, the shelter will still be able to provide services on other beds, including meals, clothes, washing, and showers. For the next 2 weeks, the city is allowing the mission to add 15 to 20 beds to its chapel area.
You think they'd let me shower there?
Hopefully.
Yesterday, state lawmakers debated a bill that would raise the minimum amount of automobile insurance that people would need to have in Arizona. Kate Brophy-McGee introduced the bill, SB 1111, which would increase liability standards and raise premiums by an average of $80 for Arizona residents. McGee says that the current standards are outdated and were set 45 years ago. She says that the current rates don't cover the increasing cost of cars, repairs, and hospitals. Republican David Farnsworth of Mesa argued that the increases amount to a tax on poor people. However, McGee says that the benefits far outweigh the costs. Farnsworth argued that the current rates are sufficient and that it could possibly put people in jail who can't afford car insurance, since it is illegal in Arizona to drive without sufficient insurance. According to the Arizona Department of Transportation, there are 500,000 vehicles without proper insurance coverage in the state. The Property Casualty Insurers Association of America, a trade organization representing insurers, also spoke out against the bill. They said that low-income people buy the minimum limits on protection because that's all they can afford. The Arizona Insurance Institute supports the bill, which they say would account for increases in medical care and repair costs. From 2005 to 2015, the Arizona Department of Transportation found that the costs for automobile injuries increased by over 50%. Injury lawyer Jeffrey Trottenberg also spoke out in support of the bill. He said that he works with mostly poor people who would see small increases of about $7 per month, but that they are the same people that need protecting. Currently, the state requires minimum liabilities of $15,000 for one person injured or killed in an accident, $10,000 for property damage. The increase would raise both of these rates to $25,000, and the changes would be put into effect by June 1st, 2018.
Dang. I mean, I'm no legislator, but I have an idea. What if you just bundle it with Medicare? Ideas. All right, so an Arizona man has been awarded $2.5 million by the state's Veterans Affairs Office yesterday. Stephen Cooper sued the VA because he says that they didn't order additional tests that would have discovered his eventual prostate cancer diagnosis in 2011. 11 months later, Cooper received news that he had terminal prostate cancer and that it was too late to treat. U.S. Magistrate Michelle Burns ruled that a nurse practitioner that found abnormalities in Cooper's prostate should have ordered additional tests at the time and could have sued him. Government lawyers on the defense had claimed that the nurse did not detect abnormalities at the time and had no way of knowing. The Phoenix VA has been under government scrutiny for the past couple of years due to a series of scandals involving long wait times and falsified documents. Administrators were accused of ordering workers to falsely claim that they saw incoming patients when they really hadn't, in order to reduce the wait times. The hospital also has been accused of substandard care for veterans. Administrators say if they only had $2.5 million, they could make everything right again.
Same. Immigrants' rights group Lupe is organizing a call-in campaign this week to encourage county prosecutors to drop felony charges against 4 protesters who were involved with the February 16th Day Without Immigrants rally. The protesters were arrested after police reportedly blocked access and forced the protest out into the street, which led police to use pepper spray. Viral videos spread of police pushing an elderly woman to the ground and indiscriminately pepper spraying protesters. Lupe is looking for charges to be dropped against Tanya Alvarez, David Leon, Najimi Rainey, and Joan Chichon. The organization is asking that Tucson residents call Mayor Jonathan Rothschild, Prosecutor Barbara Lawal, and Chief of Police Chris Magnus. A sample script and phone numbers are included on their Facebook page. To find out more, go to Facebook and search Call-In Campaign Drop the False Charges.
You didn't say the dashes, I told you that. It's the dashes. There's dashes in the... And I wanted to take a moment to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we are undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. I feel like I have this memorized. We are going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, help Joel, hosts, help us, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. We need everybody. The times require a new wave of informing ourselves. So join us, do it now, please. Email us at info@creativetucson.org to get involved. And it's a .org, so you can trust us. And if you think there's a story we're missing, a person we should interview, an upcoming event we should cover, or have any tips for us, shoot an email to info@creativetucson.org. We are here for you, and we want to cover all the stories from all points of views, all of them. So don't be strangers. Now, awesome, in national and international news.
Congressional Republicans have released a draft of their Affordable Care Act replacement yesterday to a series of criticisms and confusion. The legislation was controversially released without a score from the Congressional Budget Office, who reviews bills to reveal their economic impact. Critics say that the lack of score means that lawmakers and the public have no idea what the impact will be, and that Republicans are trying to quickly pass the legislation without proper scrutiny. Congress is planning to vote on the legislation on Wednesday at the earliest. According to the draft, the new and not really improved healthcare law would get rid of the individual mandate that required all Americans to have healthcare coverage. It would keep the popular rule that allows young people to stay on their parents' insurance until age 26, and would still force insurers to cover those with pre-existing conditions. However, insurers would be able to charge more for pre-existing conditions if the person didn't renew their insurance coverage in time. According to the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan's website, the new bill will establish a patient and state stability fund of $100 billion to design programs that meet unique needs of a state's patient populations. The biggest change will be the elimination of the Medicaid expansion, one of the most popular or hated programs depending on which side you're on. The expansion would be replaced by a per capita allotment, also known as block grants, which would give each state a specific dollar amount to establish their own system. Critics say that these types of programs frequently don't keep up pace with increasing healthcare costs and will leave average Americans paying too much for insurance. The legislation would also include tax-exempt health savings accounts to be used for healthcare, another popular Republican idea that critics say doesn't benefit poor Americans because they don't have enough money to save. The final piece is a tax credit between $2,000 and $14,000 per year offered to Americans, depending on their level of need, for Americans who don't receive insurance from their workplace. Conservative Republicans have actually opposed this piece because they claim that this is simply an entitlement program dressed up as a tax credit. The oddest part of the bill is 6 pages dedicated to taking lottery winners off the Medicaid rolls, which takes up nearly 1/10 of the bill. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan says that the section was inserted because it's too expensive for the federal government to cover the rapid increase of lottery fever. Ryan plans to add future amendments to the bill that address March Madness, the insanity workout, and food comas.
Okay, so we've had a day to parse out the details of Trump's new, but not really that different executive order that he signed yesterday. The order bans visitors from 6 countries for 90 days. Banned countries include Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Libya. Iraq was left out of this round of the Muslim ban because the Trump administration claims that they are making attempts to further vet their citizens. Critics say that the new order is still a Muslim ban and that it gives preference to countries that are friendly with the administration, such as Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Iraq, who were all left off the list. The order also imposes a 120 halt for all refugees to the U.S. and a cap at 50,000 refugees per year, which is about half of what we currently take in. Trump also gave security officials 20 days to determine what further measures they need to take and what additional information they need from the countries on the list. It also gives officials an opportunity to add countries to the list of 6 and also a wide latitude on extending the ban for larger periods of time. Of all the countries on the list, Iran will be the hardest hit because of over 42,000 visas are issued each year from the country. Because we don't have diplomatic relations with Iran, they are unlikely to agree to the additional demands outlined by the committee. So they may be in store for a permanent ban, at least while Trump is president. Critics also say that countries such as Libya, Syria, and Yemen are stuck in the middle of a civil war and probably won't be able to deliver the types of information that are requested from them. In other words, this order might be a carefully coordinated trap to permanently ban the citizens of these countries. To use a metaphor, the executive orders are like if you ordered a shit sandwich. You sent that shit sandwich back, then you got the same shit sandwich that had lettuce, pickles, and a waiver so you couldn't use it.
I think his entire presidency is just a shit sandwich.
Exactly.
Trump's executive order was passed on the same day that an international charity organization reported that Syrian children have experienced such deep trauma that it will likely affect them for the rest of their lives. Save the Children released a report stating that Syrian children are suffering from toxic stress, a severe form of psychological trauma. The study, which was the largest of its kind, studied 5.8 million Syrian children and monitored the rise in suicides and self-harm in children as young as 12 in the country. They said the amount of trauma had reached a tipping point where 70% of the interviewed children reported symptoms of toxic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder. They say that these conditions drastically raise the incidences of substance abuse and aggression. They also found that 48% of the children lost the ability to speak or have developed speech impediments since the war began. The study also interviewed adults in Syria and found that 51% are now abusing drugs to cope with stress and that 59% knew of children who were recruited into armed militia groups. When asked, 60% of adults say that the loss of education in Syria will be the most damaging legacy of the war. The study concluded that 1 in 4 Syrian children are at risk for a mental health disorder, and that in some regions there is only 1 psychologist per million people. Sorry, Syrians, wish we could help, but our president is focused on imaginary wiretaps right now.
With those stats, it's more than 100%. So people are doing drugs and they're getting recruited by militia groups.
Or developing mental health disorders. So yeah, just not looking good.
Wonderful. The New York Times has released a comprehensive study of the 11 million undocumented living in the U.S. yesterday. Using a variety of sources, they have found that an increasing number of the undocumented are not coming here by crossing the border. Instead, most are undocumented immigrants because they overstayed their visas, which they've been saying that for a while. This makes the promise of a big, sexy wall all the more pointless. The New York Times also found that while Mexicans made up more than half the number of undocumented, their numbers have been decreasing in favor of people from Guatemala, El Salvador, China, and India. China turned out to be an especially difficult problem because China doesn't accept deportations. So these people are essentially stuck here. The report also found that about 60% of the undocumented population has been in the U.S. for at least a decade, contradicting statements that people were coming over the border in droves during the Obama years. In fact, the numbers show that border crossings started decreasing before Obama took over in 2007 and began to be replaced by people overstaying their visas. The number of repeat border crossers also decreased under Obama, from over 21,000 in 2011 to about 16,000 in 2015, proving that the border was already in the process of being secured. Some other surprising findings were that 30% of the undocumented studied owned a home, and that another third lived with at least 1 child that was born in the U.S. Another contradiction found was that Trump's rapists and murderers weren't nearly as abundant as he said. Out of the 11 million people, only 300,000 were convicted of a felony, representing 2.7%, while 820,000 were charged with a crime, representing 7.5%. These figures included immigration-related crimes. In response, Trump said that decimals are fake news and that 75% of immigrants were charged with crimes.
Decimals, how do they even work?
Yeah, I still don't know.
A call from Trump saved Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu from being questioned by police over corruption and bribery allegations yesterday. Netanyahu is being questioned for the 4th time in relation to 2 cases involving receiving gifts from businessmen and having a conversation with an Israeli newspaper publisher about getting more positive press coverage. He excused himself in the middle of the questioning to take the call from Trump, with the 2 men discussing the dangers of the Iran nuclear deal, according to Netanyahu's office. Police have said that once questioning is completed, they will announce whether they will bring charges against Netanyahu. If charges are brought, it will likely lead to his resignation because a 1993 Supreme Court ruling said that ministers should step down if they are charged with corruption. Netanyahu has said that the charges are politically motivated and that he's done nothing wrong. And maybe Trump gave Netanyahu some advice on that phone call because on the same day, Israel passed a law that would ban entry into the country by anyone who supports a boycott against the Jewish state. Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, said that the law's language is loose and could be used to bar Palestinian activists from entering the country, and that it could be used to eject temporary Palestinians who are currently living in Israel. Israel denied the claims and then used the law to eject publishers of Haaretz from the country.
See, I mean, Trump's helping other countries.
So much
It's America first, but he's still helping.
He's doing great things.
While speaking at the CPAC, or the CPAC conference, Donald Trump claimed that both the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines would feature steel made from the U.S. factories. While technically he might be right, Trump isn't telling the whole story. Who would, wow, couldn't have guessed. It turns out that a steel company aligned with Russian President Vladimir Putin is looking to profit off the pipeline. TMK, IPSCO, or IPSCO, a subsidiary of the TMK Group, is a huge steel producer in the U.S., a company that makes pipes that focus on oil pipelines used for fracking operations. TMK Group has said in the past that it hopes to become a direct competitor with the U.S. Steel, the largest steel company in the country. Currently, TMK controls 16% of the oil field pipeline market in the U.S., with most of the operations in the Marcellus Shale Basin in the Northeast and Bakken Shale Basins in North Dakota. Sorry if I said that wrong. The Russian connection comes in the form of Anatoly Chubais, I believe, who is a close associate to Putin and who ran the mass privatization effort in Russia after the fall of communism. In that time, Chubais served as the main liaison between the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the US government. In the 1990s, Chubais recruited Putin to come to Moscow and study the presidential decree process under then President Boris Yeltsin, who oversaw the privatization effort. In a Bloomberg Businessweek article from 2000, Chubais was called part of the brain trust that brought Putin to power. Yay! At that time, Putin was even referred to as Chubais' man, although Putin would likely deny that he's anyone's man. Currently, Chubais runs a nanotechnology firm associated with TMK called Rusnano and operates a joint venture with a company called TMK Inox. So, is the steel made in America? Sure, I guess technically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Americans will benefit. In related news, Trump plans to restart coal mining in West Virginia by giving tax breaks to the really big and great American coal company, which is run by a Russian hedge fund.
A Republican state representative from Oklahoma has been forcing Muslim community groups to complete a survey that critics say asks stereotypical and offensive questions. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, says that the survey includes questions such as, "Do you beat your wife?" State Representative John Bennett made the questionnaire compulsory for groups who want to meet with him at the state house. The form came from a group called Act for America, who the Southern Poverty Law Center says are, quote, far and away the largest grassroots anti-Muslim group in America. Adam Soltani, executive director of CAIR's Oklahoma chapter, said that nobody should be vetted with stupid, Islamophobic, hateful, bigoted questions before they can meet with their representatives. He said that Bennett has no right to do this to Muslims or any group of people. Another question on the form asks whether Muslims would denounce terror groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah, and if Muslims should be punished for leaving Islam. One other question asks if it's wrong for a 52-year-old man to have sex with a 6-year-old girl. Bennett has been a sharp critic of Muslim groups like CAIR and has said that there's no difference between moderate Islam and extreme Islam, and that he would not tolerate something like Islam coming to the United States. He also called Islam a, quote, cancer in our nation that needs to be cut out. And Bennett recently got to work on a new questionnaire for Buddhists. The first question on his survey is, do you wear underwear underneath these robes? This was Anais Quintela.
And Besh for 5 on 20 News.
Now, let's go to the Desert Museum real quick, then we'll be back here.
All right, hello guys. So I wanted to do a segment because at 5 and 20, we've been following this movement in Tucson for about 6 months now. And I wanted to talk about it because it has been 6 months. So it's going to be our first feature, or so we think, because who knows when it's going to be done. But I wanted to talk to you guys about what we're doing and how we're following it and how it's kind of changed since October. So the beginning of it all, the whole story, was when I went out looking for the electronic music scene in Tucson. I wanted that deep house, techno, I wanted that scene, and I didn't know where it was, and I couldn't find it. And I did some searching, and I found, oddly enough, I found some yoga that has electronic music to it, but that wasn't for me. And the only other thing I found was this thing called Dazed and Confused. So I kind of dove into Dazed, and I got in with the people that at the time were running it, which was a woman by the name of Ashley and a man by the name of Elio, who is from Italy. Ashley's from the US. So since October, I've been kind of just hanging out with them and following them as much as I can with the camera. And oddly enough, because of the way the story has gone, and I'll explain in a second, it's changed a lot. So, and a lot of it has been off camera, but because of this, it has altered the way that we're going to tell this story. And at first, we wanted to just tell the story of Dazed and Confused. What was this movement in Tucson? Where is this techno scene coming from? Like, because our own Jeff Weber, had been involved in the community as well a year ago. And so when I finally came into the game in October, they've been doing this for a while, and it had taken a roller coaster ride, and it took a different shape here in Tucson. And while I was following the Dazed movement, I kind of realized that it was much larger than Dazed and Confused. It was, what is the electronic techno underground music movement in Tucson? Where has it been? Where is it now? And where is it going? So now what it's become is we are talking to everybody. The Dazed movement was formed by these people, these group of 6 to 10 people that really got it going. You had Elio at the center. This was kind of like his baby, right? But then he had this woman named Shelby who learned to DJ during this time that Dazed was being developed. Now she's in LA. So I even went out to LA to interview her and her partner in Panther, it's called. That's their DJ duo, Romy. So it's been a ride, and I've talked to a lot of people in terms of the Dazed community. But now we're looking to reach out to a lot of different people. The people that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years, people that are that have shaped the scene, the techno-electronic music scene in Tucson, but that are also shaping as we go. And what different forms does it take? Because what I've been noticing is that Tucson it's a scene culture where, like, what's the new cool thing? Like, what's happening this weekend, and how is it different than what just happened last weekend? Or what is extremely exciting, or what's different? It's kind of, it seems like what is driving this culture in Tucson of music and art and stuff like that. So, which is really cool. You see a lot of people making new spaces and a lot of people doing these just very subtle things once in a while, and then it's done. So that's really cool to see. But what does that mean for the music movement? What does it mean for someone like me who wants this techno deep house scene? What am I going to find? So that's what's been cool, is I've been following this, and since then there have been a multitude of parties hosted by Dazed, but now I've also been following people like from Congress, which you have Michael Hayes, who was in this group Banknotes with Otis, and you have Miss Abysmal, who's just on Locals Only. Her and her group of friends, they do a lot of kind of like experimental music with her voice and with different instruments, sometimes electronic, like with boards and stuff. It's hard to put your thumb on what is electronic music in Tucson right now, because a lot of it is experimental, and a lot of what they're trying to do is keeping it kind of tight knit. In these places, in these events that might not necessarily be public all the time, open to the public, stuff like that. So that's what's been really interesting to see, is that the movement's still there, but it's been taking different shapes, and that's kind of what we've been following for the past 6 months. So it's been dazed and confused, but now it's more of like, okay, what is the scene in full in Tucson? So that's what we're going to be covering for a little bit more into the spring and then maybe even the summer, depending on what form it takes. But in terms of dazed and confused, they had their 1 year just about a month or two ago. I think it was recently. They had their 1 year anniversary. So this marks 1 year of them trying to build this community in Tucson, which is tough. For anyone in the arts industry, they've told me here in Tucson, it's tough to make something stick in the arts industry in Tucson. So we've been following that. Aleo has since decided to start this 3-part thing he's doing, which is what he told me was his goal for a long time, which he wanted to come, get a following or get people interested in this music and then do this 3-part thing, which is, it's called Retro Dazed. What he wants to do is give a European perspective to electronic music, to techno, to people in this city that might not know the history behind it. They might have only heard like DJ Carnage and like W and like just like the big names, which isn't a bad thing depending on who you ask. But it's like, where did this music come from? And in Europe, especially techno, I mean Detroit. You had Detroit, you had Berlin, you had these places that it really grew. And what music is that? What's the history behind that? And that's what Aleo is trying to get at, is he's giving the European perspective, which he just did a weekend or two ago, where he spun for 6 hours. And it's his favorite songs from when he was growing up, what shaped him as a DJ, as a to-be producer one day. And then 2 weekends from now, we're gonna have a local DJ, DJ Hart, who's gonna give the American perspective. So it's gonna be all of the songs that that really pushed DJ Hart into what he does now and what he spins now and what he says that shaped him as a producer. So that will be the second party. And then I guess the third party, I mean, he's doing a 7-hour set as well in 2 weekends from now. Then the third party, to finish it all off, to finish the season, he's saying, will be them back to back. So their two styles mixed. They've been doing this at Solar Culture, the venue over there on Tool, and at Galactic. So they had a good relationship with venues here as well. We will be talking to the venues. We will be talking to people, like I said, that have been here, that are here right now, and where they're trying to take it in the future or what it was. And we're basically going to give you this 5 on 20 feature in a few months from now, which will cover all of that. So if you don't know the electronic, deep house, underground, techno, whatever movement in Tucson, where it was, where it is now, where people think it's going, we're going to give you that pretty soon here. I just wanted to touch base to let you know it is happening, and it'll be coming soon. So thank you again for watching 5 on 20 News and this segment, and we will see you tomorrow.